All right, so this is kind of up and running. This is just an update for, I don't know, the 15, 20 people who care. First of all, I have COVID really badly right now, so bear with me. So last night I went through this and I adjusted the structure that the bulb socket is mounted on, bulb receiver is mounted on to adjust for the height of the modern 250-watt bulbs that these take compared to the 200 watts they used to take, or they were originally designed to take. Can't get the 200 watts anymore. I know I mentioned that before, but you can get 250 watt versions. But the 250 watts are significantly longer of a bulb. Uh, from what I can gather, they're about an inch and a half longer, which in the scale of how touchy these things can be, that's huge. I drew a little diagram because, like I said, one, I was sick last night, and two, you didn't want to see me swear and sweat while ripping apart the base of this. But unfortunately, this is the first thing I've ran into with this lamp so far. If you're trying to restore your own, that if you're not a little bit handy, you're gonna have some problems with it. Wasn't rocket science, but you need to be able to turn a wrench, have a power drill, tweak a couple things, and just use your head realistically. And again, it wasn't complicated at all, but I know if you're not a little bit handy, you're probably not something you'd want to do. But easiest way and the best way I can show you without having shown you exactly what I did is this diagram right here. And ignore my artwork, but it'll give you a pretty good idea of what it was dealing with. So, unlike in a typical lava lamp, usually this threaded rod um, runs straight to the bottom of the lamp. There's a nut on the bottom of the lamp that tightens to it, and it runs up to where it's supposed to be. On these, because of probably just the weight of the bulb and just the structure of the entire thing, it has this kind of V-shaped mount on the bottom. Actually, this does represent it pretty well. So if this was just a clear base of a lava lamp, this is how the Colossus looks. And what I did was I took the felt off the bottom of the lamp, and there was actually Phillips head screws that mounted these these feet on the legs of this to the base of the lamp. I was actually surprised because I thought they were rivets at first, and I was like, oh, geez, what am I going to do here? Didn't want to have to drill them out and really modify too much. So all I did, realistically, was I took this base out, disconnected the socket, and from the socket over here, the wiring runs down to a dimmer that's on the interior of the base over here. I didn't draw that, but you get the idea. So all I did was I took out this base, this stand for the bulb, took some measurements comparing this length of the bulb on the new one that I have compared to what the old ones theoretically were. I marked the difference between the two bulbs on the legs, flattened out these feet so it was just straight down, and then I bent them over to be flush with the base again. Drilled two new holes in the new feet, or the new same feet, I guess, but longer feet where they needed to be to match up with the holes in the bottom of this base here. And I actually put some stainless bolts through that matched in size and put nuts on top of them. So it's actually a better setup that was in there originally. And now I'm covering it with a piece of paper while we got this thing going behind me. Actually, one more thing. The good thing about this is I know this lamp is actually running a little cool now. I'll get into how long it's been running in a bit. But I want to bring the bulb up, and I know this isn't to scale. I want to bring the bulb up a little closer to the bottom of the globe. I brought it pretty close, but I know that these things are finicky. And all I can do now, though, that I have this so it'll fit this bulb in, is I can just put a couple of washers in between this threaded rod and the top of this base, and it'll pull it up a little bit and then tighten the nut to the bottom of this threaded rod. And that way I can adjust. The only problem is I do have to now get this globe back off, which, one, I can normally lift a lot of weight, but I don't want to have to move this thing around a million times and risk something happening to it. But just to be safe, I think I'm going to take a bunch of the fluid out before I move it. Probably 2/3 of the fluid out, let it cool, siphon off a bunch of the fluid so it doesn't weigh nearly as much. Move it, adjust the bulb, put the fluid back in, and try again. I mean, it is flowing, but um, you're kind of seeing a little bit more than it's typically doing, because I started this last night at, I don't know, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and at like 65%, because I was just really timid with the 250 watt bulb compared to the 200 that it originally ran. I wanted to be really careful. This lamp doesn't have a cap on it anyway, so it's not sealed, so it's not building any pressure, but still, just to be cautious. I didn't want to risk heating up that base too much and damaging the cool paint on it or anything like that. When I woke up this morning, or actually before I went to bed last night at around 11 o'clock, the wax did erupt. Not as much as I would have expected if it had been running at full power, but it did go. And then this morning when I woke up, the wax was fluid at like 65% power to the bulb. So I turned it up to about 100% at about, I don't know, 9 o'clock this morning. I should be at work right now, but I'm sick as a dog. So I turned it up to about 100% at about 9 o'clock this morning, and within a couple of hours, it was really starting to send up smaller balls. And then about, I don't know, around 11 o'clock, 2 hours ago, it did started to legitimately flow. But actually, I can show you a perfect example of something you can look for in lava lamps when you're addressing them in a minute. Typically, when you get one large tower like this, and it has been flowing to the top and just staying as a large tower, collapsing, occasionally breaking up and actually getting some pretty cool flow. But I can tell from a mile away it's not running quite hot enough. And I checked it before. I think it's at about 119, and I probably want to bring it up to about 123, 24, something like that. But yeah, see, it's doing this a lot. It's not what you really want. Anyways, I want this lamp to be perfect. So I'm going to bring that bulb up a little bit once I drain it and get the weight off of it. And I think that'll definitely make this lamp flow a lot better. A couple of people mentioned that they wanted just more, seeing as we have this cool thing flowing in the background, you can look at it. I can just talk about lava lamps over it. People direct messaged me and stuff in some of the forums just mentioning how they were curious about the difference between vintage and modern lamps. And I guess I can get into that a little bit. People argue with me all the time because I'm not as big of an advocate for the vintage thing as some people are. And that's not meaning that I'm an advocate for the modern stuff that like you get at Spencer Gifts. Stuff's trash for the most part. Modern stuff also doesn't flow well at all in small lamps. Like the ones you get at, like, say, Spencer Gifts, or I know Target has their line. Just the modern stuff's not set up to flow in a vessel only about this big. But as far as like grandes go, like I always bring it up. Like the grandes I make do flow spectacularly well. I don't, because there's always the comparison between the old American Giant lamps that were set up, had the same dimensions more or less as the grande lamps. I don't think they flow worlds better than a well set up grande lamp. People go, "Oh, well, you never own one." No, I have two. I have one I have an American Giant that's still practically new. Instead of its original box, it gets brought out every couple of years, and I run it just to make sure to keep up with it. But every time I have it out, I'm just afraid something's going to happen to it because it's immaculate. It is literally brand new. It's been ran like probably 20 times ever. There's not a scratch, a nick, a scuff on the thing. It's immaculate. It's blue fluid with the white wax. And then I have what was originally a red wax, yellow fluid Giant that was absolutely trashed. The base was dented to hell. I'm not bad with body work, but I had a body shop do it because it was so bad. And the base is great now. And the fluid was giving me some problems. The flow was awesome on it, but it would get really cloudy when it was hot, which usually when you run into that position, it looks clear when it's cold, cloudy when it's hot. Usually when you're running into that situation, you're kind of set up with a conundrum where it's either deal with it or change the fluid. And I mean, I can make vintage fluid, but vintage fluid with large scale lamps is the density levels are always different because I have hydrometers and everything, hydrometers, however you want to say it, to compare the density levels in the fluid in small lamps with vintage fluid, but it's never the same in the Giants and the large scale lamps. So I do have that thing set up. It runs just as great as it always did or originally did. And now the The fluid looks great. It's clear fluid with red wax now, and I think it was originally yellow with red, but there's no. It could have been a clear with red, and just the fluid had gone so bad that it had a yellow tint to it. But I think it was a yellow with red. It was a cool effect, but like I said, I'm always after the clear fluid with red. And I have an untouched giant that I'm never going to modify. So I didn't mind changing this one up a little bit. And it was so trashed that it didn't matter. But everyone goes, well, you should have a real giant because then you'd never say Grande's flows. Well, I have two giants and they're awesome. And the one big difference with them is the eruptions of the wax when they start to heat up. Everyone loves those cool spidery web things that they get when the lamp first starts getting to temp and it freezes like that. You know, hot wax goes into the colder fluid up top and it freezes in that position for a while. The old American giants and any of the old American large scale lamps, the eruptions were just so much more intricate and awesome. But as far as the flow goes, if you do a large scale modern lamp like a Grande and you do it correctly, there's not that much of a difference once they get hot. And just more about the old American lamps. I had somebody messaging me about one last night that they were having problems with. And I'm sorry if I'm not making any sense. Like I said, I'm sick as a dog. The most common lava light vintage American lamp that you're possibly going to find is something out of the Midnight series. You've all seen one. It's a looks like a standard sized lava lamp. It's a black base. It's got a plastic cap on the top, and underneath it, it's got the white lava light beer bottle style cap underneath it. And another reason why I don't advocate for the vintage stuff is hard, and I appreciate it. I love this stuff, but as hard as some of the other people do is, especially with the Midnights, the overwhelming majority of them, because there's some guys that collect midnight globes to death. They want this every color they made, and there's some exceptionally rare ones. There's some that like there's arguments of whether they exist or not. Maybe I'll do something on that at some point. But for now, 3 out of 4 midnight globes I get, and that's the 32-ounce old American lava light globes that I get, are beyond their prime. They've been run beyond their perfect function. And they're, once it gets past a point, they're tough to get back. The wax just only has a lifespan that's going to last so long. And the overwhelming majority of those lamps ended up in some kid's room, and they had them on 24/7 for years. So they've gone over. When you get an original one that's, and the problem is new old stock, if you find one, because they do come up pretty frequently actually, if you find a Midnight that's new in the box from say 2001, those have their problems too, because these things were not meant to be put in a box and left in a storage unit for 21 years without being able to run, or 23 years without ever being run. So those have their problems too. They're tricky to really get up to. Those you can usually get functioning though, if you want to take them apart and open them up and tweak around with them, add some glycerin, things like that. But the overwhelming majority of the Midnights that I get, literally 3 out of 4, aren't great. They have their problems. Those old 32-ounce lava light globes, the overwhelming majority of them I get, and I've had hundreds of them, have issues. They're beyond their prime, and you can do things to bring them back to some extent, but how much it is, I don't know. So when people tell you, oh, you got to get the vintage stuff, if that's your thing, great. If it's not, there's cool modern stuff. Some of them you have to work on, but like I said, I show you videos that try to make it a little easier for you to get into it. And if you do it the right way, you can make awesome lamps. And again, I'm just babbling over this thing flowing so you can get an idea what I was talking about, of the fact that I don't think it's really hot enough yet. And like I said, it's not a problem to change it. I could probably lift this off full, but not while I'm sick, and I'd rather not lift it. I can definitely lift it off full. I'm going to have to at some point, but I don't really want to do that until I'm getting ready to put it on a pallet and send it back to the guy via freight. But the color came out great. It's a super vibrant red. I'll get the bulb resituated tonight, and I'll show some more videos of it once it really gets flowing the right way.